of tonight's program answers the question, is there God after Prince? The title of Peter Coviello's new book of essays. Peter's a professor of English at the University of Illinois at Chicago and the author of 5 previous books, including Tomorrow's Parties, a finalist for a 2013 Lambda Award in LGBT studies, and his essays have appeared in Free's Chicago Review, Los Angeles Review of Books, Elle, and Believer, among many other publications. Please join me in welcoming him to the Prince Party.
So what's better to just really get a dance party going than having a professor read to you? Wow. So I'd really like to say, well, I want to say thank you to all of you for coming out on a Tuesday night. I want to thank the American Rose Museum, but also Gabriel. I would once again like to say thank you very much for lighting it up. That was really like a seance-like restoration, and I'm just enormously grateful for that. I'm not gonna take too much of your time. I'm gonna read to you very briefly. I wrote this book and it's called Is There a God After Prince? I'll tell you very briefly what the book is about. So there are like 2 things. I'm a literary critic, so I write criticism. And one of the things the book is about is like finding a mode of writing about objects that we love, like songs and books and movies and artists, that's as companionable and as like attuned to sorrow and joy and rapture as it is conceptually precise and intellectually exhaustive. And I don't want to grant the opposition between those 2 things, that being smart about an object means you can't have ardor about the object. That's one thing that it's about. The other thing that it's about is what it can mean to love things like songs and books and records and artists like Prince, and to do so even now, in the midst of a sort of planet-sized calamity, not just climate, but sort of and that's a sort of odd question. And I mean, like, what are you doing when you're loving crazily a movie or a poem or a novel? And one of the things I think you're doing is you're making worlds with people. You know what I mean? Like, the way I fell in love with people and the way I learned to be friends with people is by fighting with them about things. You like that? That's ridiculous that you would like that, you know? And that's sort of what the book is about. But I'm not going to read you much of that. I'm going to read you the essay that's about Prince, which I wrote on, you guys remember the night when Prince died, you know? It was terrible. And my partner and I were out to a terrible academic dinner, and no one seemed to be upset. And that, of course, was upsetting. So anyway, I wrote this that night. And I'm just going to read you a little bit of it, and then that'll be that. This essay is called Is There a God After Prince? So, and it harkens back to some previous times. Here we go. And this will be about, I promise you, it won't be more than like 8 or 9 minutes. So, it's the Maine midwinter, hard, frozen, and dark. I'm trying to live through it as best I can, but it is not going entirely well. I am, in the first place, a newish arrival, which means I am considerably less fluent in the protocols of madness deflection than I might be. But I am also, in my newness, another kind of unsteadied. I have been actually employed here as an actual professor at an actual college for about 6 months, and not for a moment have I been free of the sense of an imminent, disastrous exposure. Perhaps feeling like an obvious fraud is a function of being in your first job. Whatever the case, and whatever my cross-cutting elation at having any kind of job at all, adult professional life is for me a precarious sort of performance, brittle and unconvincing. I am 27 years old. It is inevitably 1999. But then, from deep in some yet unfrozen reservoir of optimism, a decision comes to me, a fateful decision. I decide that I will have a party. I decide that I will have a dance party. I decide to send a mass email to every person I've met and to many others I have, and it reads, please come to my apartment on Cleveland Street for a party celebrating the 15th anniversary of Purple Rain. Any and all non-minors welcome. And so, on a February night at the back end of the Clinton era, a bunch of souls wintering out in a sleepy New England college town conspire to beguile an evening with whiskey, low-key drugs, and many hours of in-house dancing. In an underfurnished and rapidly overheating living room, books piled in listing towers, boots and coats stacked in a jumble in the corners. I remember looking around me, seeing even the starchiest of my daylight colleagues and fledgling friends now sweat-soaked and giddy, teetering toward a Prince-induced euphoria, and thinking, oh, I can live here. Among the semi-acquaintances to show that night, one makes a special impression. She's the friend of friends and has come ready to dance, despite the fact that she, as I know, in the latter days of what has been a hard, slow-moving divorce. Her ex must have the kids for the night. I tell her I'm glad she came. Later I'll say, you walked in, I woke up. For years and years afterward, every midwinter, we'd throw dance parties. Though these were a few blocks away in the house she and I then came to share with her girls. When we were married, our friends knew these as Purple Rain nights, or more simply, Prince parties. So a friend in England scored tickets a few summers ago to one of those impromptu solo gigs Prince had taken to performing, despite what was for me a near fatal onset of envy, or perhaps in order to express it, I wrote her a series of badgering emails. Tell me about the show. I said, what was it like? Her response was memorable. It was unlanguageable, she said. Also, I think I might be pregnant. That's still a great show description. In a similar, sadder way, this too, yesterday's awful, blindsiding tear in the fabric of things, is unlanguageable. There is, of course, the routinely undoing power of grief in responses to deaths, no matter how mediated it is, God knows, an impressive quantity. And there is, too, the familiar drift of our metaphors and sorrow out toward the terrain of measure and measurelessness, the too huge influence, the too many songs, the too proliferating memories, the too vast territories of joy. I am with you, fellow grievers, in all of this. I found out in a coffee shop, texting with a friend. I stood for about 10 minutes on the corner of Clark and Foster, weepy and paralyzed, unable to imagine what to do next. Was there eating lunch after Prince? After Prince, would we talk on phones, take trains? Was there sex after Prince? I want to say a small word about this, our newest burden of the unassimilable. I want to say that Prince is hard to grieve because he is, in an only barely not literal sense, divine. I want to say that the categories that most attend him and that the light of his person illuminates are not those made by the hands of men. You can see this inner attunement, this call of an organizing otherwise everywhere in the archive of Prince. Think of the zone of impermeable privacy he creates around himself on stage, but also in song. There has never, ever been a male singer who's made more of coyness, of flirtatious recessiveness and withholding. He says, cool, but I'm keeping my pants on while getting in the bath with Dorothy Parker, and it kills. Think, sweet Jesus, just think of the unrivaled power of his hotness. Everybody knows that Prince is a miracle of transitivity, invoking, then bewildering all the nearest idioms of race, sex, gender, time, his blackness and his maleness and his straightness and his queerness, all these roles like the sexiest Emersonian in the history of the world, he endeavors to embody after a new and unprecedented way. Stop whatever you're doing and right now, look up the video of Prince performing at the goddamn halftime show of the goddamn Super Bowl back in the winter of 2007. Watch him stride the stage, a 5-foot-something colossus in turquoise and peach. Watch the rain caress and exalt him. Truly, look at the comportment of this man as he struts and leers. Look at that knowingness, that grin. It is the inward smile of someone watching with serene indulgence as an entire world tries to imagine a set of terms capacious enough to hold him, to grasp the atomic scale detonation of swagger and style and sex that is his person, and fails to do so. Look upon my works, ye mighty, that smile says, now let's fuck. This, friends, is the otherworldliness. Let's just say it, the divinity of Prince. Without contempt, without pity, with louche bemusement and flirty solicitousness, he stands apart from the creaking little organizing edifices of the merely human. They address him, but they do not adhere to him. He speaks in and as something otherwise that is also deliciously near. Put on his songs, any of them. Here, they say, do you need a reminder of the exhilarating limitlessness of the world apart from the knowable and the known? Here you go. And then, with a generosity not much in this broken world can match, they invite you into it. In these little passages of turbulent grace, here it is, they say, electric word. You'll find it in the rhythm and the harmony. You'll find it in the lewd beauty of the funk, in the delirious inconceivabilities of sex. You'll find it on the 2 and the 4, the 1 and the 3, in the groove so funky it's on the run, the guitar that gently weeps, the voice of the man who only wants to see you laughing. Thanks. Thank you very much. It's kind of you to come. I think if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer questions.
I've got a microphone I can bring around if anybody has any questions for Peter tonight.
Or comments, you know what I mean? Like,
or like Prince stories.
Yeah, yeah. I was just in Minneapolis, and there's a lot. I was in Minneapolis like this weekend doing a book thing, and there, of course, it's a scene of amazing Prince stories. Because this is like a very, very moving thing. Like, on the one hand, like Minneapolis, as you know, is like a Midwestern town. It's sort of a chill town. And they recognize Prince as a member of this community. And he's also an otherworldly genius, like a Mozart scale genius. So on the one hand, you recognize that. And on the other hand, sometimes he just wants to buy a record. So there's a lot of stories about acknowledging him at the record store or at the store and then letting him do his thing. And I find that very moving. You know, I find that like comportment toward him very moving. Yeah. What else can I tell you?
Well, if there aren't any questions, Peter will be signing books at the seminary co-op table in the back. They're our bookstore partner. You can also, if you're watching online, you can purchase a book from the link that we'll post in the chat. But if you don't yet have a book, please make your way to the back to purchase that. We're going to keep the music going and the bar open for a little bit more Prince enjoyment. But thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much, Allison. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out on a fall night. It's nice to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much.